Hello everybody, this is Gregory with 5-Minute Catholic Apologetics and Living, where 5 minutes of your time may get you to the divine. Today we're going to talk about the smoke of Satan has entered the church homily from Paul VI and discuss its implications. Now before we begin, let's start with a prayer. Nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritui Sancti. Amen. Gloria Patri et Filio et Spiritui Sancto, sicut erat in principio et nunc et semper et saecula saeculorum. So many of you know Paul was the Pope from the last few concluding years of Vatican II to 1978, so like 1963 to 1978. And on the 9th anniversary of his accession to the pontificate, he gave a homily in Italian, and one of the quotes from it, and I'll quote it, especially it was in Italian, but it's been translated. Quote, this is Paul VI. We would say that through some mysterious crack, no, it's not mysterious, through some crack, the smoke of Satan has entered the church of God. There is doubt, uncertainty, problems, dissatisfaction, confrontation. The church is no longer trusted. We trust the first pagan prophet we see who speaks to us in some newspaper, and we run behind him and ask him if he has the formula for true life. I repeat, doubt has entered our conscience, and it entered through the windows that should have been open to the light. Science. So there's a couple of things here. Smoke is Satan. Is he being hyperbolic? He could be being hyperbolic. We know Christ uses hyperbole quite a bit in the Gospels. If your eyes are causing you to sin, pluck it out. You must leave your family to follow me. And so don't call no man a father. There's quite a lot of hyperbole. Is he speaking in hyperbole, saying that the church is no longer being listened to? And think about it, this is in this homily was done in 1972. So I mean, this is at the peak of not just, for lack of a better word, tumult or change going on in the church. This is only a few years after the Novus Ordo Mass was being implemented. So we eschewed essentially the Latin Mass and went to the vernacular, and all the changes that Annabella Bunini pushed through to make the Mass more Protestant in his own words. And we have episodes here to discuss that. So you're dealing with that, but you're also dealing with the sexual revolution. You're dealing with the increase of the drug culture. You're just turning, the West in itself is turning toward a more immoral behavior, higher rates of abortion, of course. Abortion is going to be legalized in America in a year after this homily, higher rates of contraception, and in general, just turning away from not just the church teaching of the Catholic Church, but the church teaching of all Christian churches. So when he says the smoke of Satan has entered the church, it kind of reminds us how the smoke of Satan in some ways has always been in the church. The church has always dealt with bad people, bad seeds that have been following the works of the flesh and not the fruits of the Spirit. Sometimes we have this halcyon idea that the church was in a perfect, pristine state prior to Vatican II, and only after it's wretched. I think this is a binary, monolithic, and faulty thinking. If you know anything about the history of the church has always dealt with scandal, heresies, bad leadership, laity not listening, laity being immoral. I mean, we're no different than the Israelites in the Old Testament. So what is Paul saying here? Well, is he saying that it's increased during this time? Well, I think he's saying that the smoke of Satan has entered in that. What does Satan always teach? He's the father of lies, right? He's the father of untruths and getting between us and God. So when Paul keeps talking about how we run to the first pagan prophet to see who speaks to us in some newspaper, and we run behind him and ask him if there's a formula for true life, and so forth. He says that the church is no longer trusted. I mean, this is exactly what Satan wants. Right? Satan's the adversary. He's Satan. He's Satan, and so forth. And so I think he's illustrating the point that we've always had to deal with a kind of a secular world, and the church has always been contrary to the secular world. You can see this in James and in 1 John, where both of those writers say that those who love this world hate God. So the church was always kind of put in a position to be contrary to whatever the secular world be, whether it be ancient Roman time or later, even in Christendom time, and certainly during the time of the Enlightenment, and later in the French Revolution and during the revolutions of the 19th century. The church is supposed to be a bulwark of absolute truth, for lack of a better word. And many times we're going to be in conflict with the greater world, and certainly in the 21st century, you've seen this. And I think a lot of people hear this and they think, well, the church is in apostasy. I think we have to remember that Christ is not a liar, and Christ says that the gates of hell will never prevail over the church. So yes, there's going to be infiltration, bad infiltration, even satanic, even people in the curia that might be crypto-Satanists. Absolutely. I mean, you listen to someone like Malachi Martin, the old priest turned writer, and I can't remember if it's in Windswept House. I think it's in Windswept House. I forget. I like Vatican. I like his novel Vatican, which is, I think is a better novel, but I think it's Windswept House. He starts the novel talking about an actual satanic black mass that's occurring in the Vatican in 1963 during Vatican II. So we can believe that there's satanic influences in the church. And look, Christ said there's always going to be the wheat and the weeds. And the apostle said, do you want us to round up the weeds? No, let them both grow because you might hurt the wheat. At the end times, we will harvest them both up. So in every time in church history, we've always had this problem. Look at Judas, right? Even with the first 12 apostles, many of them were cowards. Many of them were blowhards like James and John. And then, of course, we have the ultimate betrayer with Judas. But we've always had bad people. We've always had Satan trying to destroy the church. So because the smoke of Satan's around doesn't mean necessarily the church has been infiltrated and is in utter apostasy. I think there's going to be a certain type of people who like to delve into this kind of what we would perceive to call conspiracy theory and say that absolute truth, the church is in apostasy and Satanists run the church. And no doubt a lot of Protestants have believed this since Luther. Luther was the first one who started to say that that the Pope was the Antichrist. But I think we need to slow down, put the brakes on a little. The smoke of Satan's always in the church. It's always been in the church. We're always fighting with principalities. We're always fighting the temptations of the devil. And the devil, of course, is going to try to corrupt the church, the bride of Christ, and, of course, the human, super fallible, flawed, sin-culpable people that occupy the church at the time. And I think that's not going to stop. I have episodes here. It's like, I don't think the church is in apostasy. And anyone who unequivocally and emphatically says that that is not true, that the church is in fact in apostasy, you're suffering from the sin of pride, because there's no way you can tell from your basement in Wichita Falls, Texas, or wherever you're at in the world, that you have undeniable absolute proof that the church is in apostasy. And I would tell you to check yourself, because you're lacking humility to say these things. Certainly the church has some troubles right now. It's had troubles pretty much every century of its existence. But yeah, it has troubles right now. But the church will not fall. The gates of hell will never prevail. Christ says at the end of Matthew that he will be with us till the end of time. And we have to have trust. What are the cardinal virtues? Hope. What's the opposite? Despair. Don't have despair. Have hope. Have hope. And if you feel that the church is falling, do something constructive about it. Start on your parish level, your parochial level, and do something about it instead of reading Reddit and freaking out over things that honestly you can't affect change. Guys, post in the comments. I'd love to hear from you if you agree or disagree. Until next time, take care, God bless, and pray.